The real reason for NASA's blackout isn't what you think. Everyone is looking up. That's the problem. While the world focuses on an interstellar visitor, while astronomers debate whether 3I Atlas is natural or artificial, while forums explode with speculation about alien probes and government cover-ups, almost nobody is asking the more disturbing question: what if that's exactly what they want? What if the blackout, the missing data, the coordinated silence across multiple space agencies, what if all of it is designed not to hide what's in space, but to distract us from what's happening right here on Earth? I'm going to present you with two theories tonight. Two explanations for the September blackout that go far deeper than simple technical failures or routine data embargoes. The first theory is what most people suspect, that 3I Atlas is not a comet, that the high-resolution images revealed geometric structures, propulsion systems, technological features that prove this object is a spacecraft from another civilization, that NASA and ESA saw undeniable evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence and decided humanity wasn't ready for the truth. This theory is extraordinary. It would change everything we know about our place in the universe. But as shocking as it sounds, it might actually be the optimistic scenario. Because there's a second theory, a darker possibility that most people haven't considered. What if 3I Atlas is exactly what they want us to believe it is? What if the whole mystery, the suspicious timing, the coordinated data suppression, what if it's all theater, a carefully orchestrated distraction, designed to keep our eyes on the sky while something far more immediate, far more terrestrial, far more dangerous unfolds right here on our planet? What if the visitor they don't want you to see isn't in space at all? What if it's already here? And what if the September blackout was never about hiding alien technology? What if it was about hiding the fact that contact has already been made, that interaction is already occurring, and that everything we think we know about the situation is a lie designed to keep us looking in the wrong direction? Let me walk you through both possibilities. Let me show you the evidence for each, and then you can decide which explanation fits the facts better, which scenario accounts for the patterns we observe, which theory explains not just what happened in September, but what's been happening for months before and continues to happen right now, as agencies scramble to control a narrative that's threatening to escape their grasp. Because one way or another, the September blackout was not what it appeared to be, and the truth, whichever truth it turns out to be, is far stranger and more unsettling than the simple story of missing data and delayed releases. This is going to be a deep investigation. This is going to challenge assumptions. This is going to take us places that feel uncomfortable, that seem too conspiratorial, that push the boundaries of what we normally consider plausible. But every claim I make will be grounded in verifiable facts. Every connection I draw will be based on documented evidence, and by the end you'll understand why the real reason for NASA's blackout isn't what you think. It's either much more profound or much more sinister, possibly both. Let's start with Theory 1. The spacecraft hypothesis. The idea that 3I Atlas is artificial, that it's a probe or vessel from an extraterrestrial civilization, and that the blackout occurred because NASA's cameras captured proof of this, that authorities deemed too sensitive to release. This isn't as far-fetched as it might sound. In fact, when you examine the object's behavior and the response it triggered, the artificial hypothesis starts to look disturbingly plausible. 3I Atlas appeared in our solar system in early 2025, identified as an interstellar object based on its hyperbolic trajectory. It wasn't bound to our sun. It was passing through, coming from somewhere else in the galaxy, and after its close approach to the inner solar system, it would leave forever, continuing its journey through interstellar space. This alone made it only the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected, after Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. But from the beginning, 3I Atlas was strange. Ground-based observations revealed comet-like activity, outgassing that created a visible coma and tail. This seemed to support a natural explanation. Comets are chunks of ice and rock, and when they get close to the sun, the heat causes the ice to sublimate, creating the characteristic appearance we associate with these objects. So far, so normal, except the details didn't quite fit. The Keck Observatory in Hawaii analyzed the spectrum of light coming from 3I Atlas and found emissions of nickel and cyanide. Now, these elements do appear in some comets, but the combination and intensity were unusual. Nickel in particular suggested that metallic components were somehow being vaporized. Not impossible for a natural object, but unexpected. The James Webb Space Telescope observed the object and found its atmosphere dominated by carbon dioxide, which implied it formed in a very specific region of a protoplanetary disk. Again, not impossible, but raising questions about where exactly this thing came from and what its history might be. And then there was the sunward jet. This is where the natural explanation really starts to break down. Multiple observations from both ground-based telescopes and space-based instruments detected material being expelled from 3I Atlas in a direction that included a component toward the Sun. This is wrong. Fundamentally, physically wrong according to everything we know about how comets work. Solar radiation pressure pushes material away from the Sun. That's why comet tails point away from the Sun. That's basic physics. That's what should happen. But 3I Atlas was doing something else. The sunward jet wasn't a brief anomaly. It wasn't a viewing angle trick. It persisted across multiple observation epochs. It maintained its orientation in a way that suggested active control rather than passive response to solar heating. And this is where astronomers started to whisper the possibility that nobody wanted to say out loud. What if the jet isn't caused by sublimating ice? What if it's propulsion? What if this object has engines? Think about what an interstellar probe would need. It would need attitude control. It would need the ability to adjust its trajectory during its journey through the galaxy. It would need some form of propulsion that could operate over the decades or centuries or millennia it might take to travel between stars. And one very efficient way to achieve this would be through controlled outgassing, venting material in specific directions to create thrust, exactly like what a sunward jet would represent. If you're approaching a star and you need to slow down or adjust your angle or recharge power systems, you might vent material toward that star. The direction wouldn't be random. It would be purposeful. It would create thrust in the opposite direction, allowing you to fine-tune your trajectory through the inner system. This would look exactly like what observers were seeing from 3I Atlas. An active jet pointing the wrong direction according to natural physics, but exactly the right direction if the goal was controlled maneuvering. Now, before the September blackout, this was considered an interesting but highly speculative hypothesis. The scientific consensus, to the extent there was one, was that 3I Atlas was probably natural with some unusual characteristics that would eventually be explained as more data became available. The idea that it might be artificial was discussed in conference hallways and late-night conversations, but it wasn't something anyone was willing to put in a peer-reviewed paper without much stronger evidence. And that's where the high-resolution imaging was supposed to come in, because spectroscopy tells you what something is made of, but imaging tells you what it looks like. And if 3I Atlas was artificial, if it was a manufactured object rather than a natural comet, the images would show it. You would see geometric features. You would see structures that couldn't form through natural accretion and collision. You would see edges, angles, patterns that scream design rather than chaos. The Psyche spacecraft was perfectly positioned to capture those images. Its camera was designed to photograph metallic surfaces with stunning clarity. It was going to pass within range of 3I Atlas in early September with excellent viewing geometry. NASA had announced this observation opportunity. It was on the public schedule. Scientists around the world were waiting for those images because they would finally answer the question of whether this object's strange behavior was matched by strange appearance. And then September 3rd arrived. The cameras should have been pointed. The images should have been taken. The data should have flowed back to Earth and been uploaded to public archives within hours or days. This is how it always works. This is the standard procedure that Psyche had been following flawlessly for months. But instead, silence. The archive went dark. For 72 hours, no data appeared. And when the flow resumed on September 8th, the images of 3I Atlas were simply not there. They had never been uploaded. They have never appeared in any public database. If you believe Theory 1, this is the moment of discovery and suppression. This is when Psyche's cameras revealed that 3i Atlas was not natural. This is when someone at NASA saw geometric structures or propulsion systems or technological features that proved beyond doubt that this object was built by an intelligence that is not human. And this is when the decision was made to classify those images, to remove them from public access, to trigger protocols for information management that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. The evidence supporting this theory extends beyond just the Psyche blackout. Remember that the European Space Agency's ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter also had observation opportunities, and remember that when researchers looked for that data in ESA's archives, they found it listed but locked behind an embargo date initially set for the year 2099, 74 years in the future. An embargo so long it effectively meant never. When the astronomical community noticed and questioned this date, it was changed to April 3, 2026, but the data remains inaccessible. Why would ESA lock away their observations with such an extreme embargo? If the object was just an unusual comet, there would be no reason for secrecy. Natural phenomena don't require classification. But if the ExoMars instruments captured the same thing Psyche's cameras saw, if the evidence of artificiality was undeniable, then suddenly the embargo makes sense. It makes sense if both NASA and ESA are coordinating their response to an extraordinary discovery. It makes sense if there are international protocols, agreements between governments about how to handle potential contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. It makes sense if what was discovered is so profound that authorities need time to analyze, verify, prepare, and decide how to inform the public without causing panic. And it's not just Psyche and ExoMars. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's HiRISE camera could have photographed 3i Atlas as it passed near Mars in October. HiRISE is one of the most powerful imaging systems we've ever put in space, capable of resolving features 30 centimeters across. If any camera could reveal technological details on an interstellar object, HiRISE could. But no HiRISE images of 3i Atlas have been released. There have been no announcements about whether observations were even attempted, just silence. The same pattern appears across every spacecraft that had a high-resolution observation opportunity. Data is either missing, delayed by months with specific embargo dates, or simply never acknowledged. This systematic suppression across multiple agencies, multiple spacecraft, multiple countries, all for the same object, suggests coordination at a level above individual mission teams. It suggests that someone made a decision that observations of 3i Atlas would not be handled through normal scientific channels, and the most straightforward explanation for why that decision would be made is that those observations showed something extraordinary, something that proved we are not alone in the universe. Under Theory 1, the September blackout is exactly what it appears to be: a cover-up, a suppression of evidence, a decision by governmental and scientific authorities that humanity is not ready to know that an artificial object from another star system is passing through our solar system, that extraterrestrial intelligence exists, that we have been visited, that everything we thought we knew about our cosmic solitude is wrong. This would be the most significant discovery in human history. It would fundamentally alter our understanding of our place in the universe. It would raise immediate questions about the intentions of whoever built the probe, about whether it's merely observing or actively gathering intelligence, about whether contact might follow, about whether we're prepared for such contact. These are enormous questions with implications for national security, religious institutions, social stability, and the entire framework of how we understand ourselves as a species. If I believed this theory completely, if I thought the spacecraft hypothesis fully explained everything we observe, this video would end here. I would tell you that NASA discovered an alien probe, classified the evidence, and we need to demand disclosure. That would be shocking enough. That would be the story of the century. But I don't think that's the whole truth, because there are aspects of this situation that don't quite fit. There are patterns in the data suppression and the timing of events that suggest something even stranger might be happening. Which brings us to Theory 2, the distraction hypothesis. And this is where things get really disturbing, because what if everything I just told you? What if the entire narrative about 3i Atlas being artificial? What if it's exactly what they want you to believe? What if the missing data and the embargo dates and the coordinated suppression are all real, but the reason for them has nothing to do with what's in space? What if the visitor they're hiding isn't 3i Atlas at all? What if it's something else entirely? Something closer, something already here? Let me lay out the case for this theory, and I want you to really think about what I'm saying. Really consider the implications. Because if this is true, if Theory 2 is correct, then we are living through something unprecedented, something that makes the discovery of an alien probe look almost quaint by comparison. The first piece of evidence is the timing. 3i Atlas was discovered in early 2025, but it had been approaching the inner solar system for months before that. Automated surveys detected it, calculated its trajectory, determined it was an interstellar visitor. All of this happened in the normal course of astronomical observation. But when did the object really start generating intense interest? When did it become the focus of planned spacecraft observations and public attention? It was August 2025, just weeks before the Psyche observation window. In August, new spectroscopic data was released showing the sunward jet and the unusual chemical composition. Suddenly, 3i Atlas was everywhere. Astronomy websites were covering it. Forums were discussing it. Scientists were speculating about its properties. The object went from being a mildly interesting interstellar visitor to being the astronomical story of the year. And this crescendo of attention peaked just before September 3rd, just before the moment when Psyche was supposed to capture the definitive images. Now, why does this timing matter? Because while everyone was looking up, while the entire astronomical community was focused on this object in space, other things were happening on Earth. Things that normally would have generated enormous attention. Things that should have been front-page news, but they got buried. They got overlooked, because everyone was distracted by the interstellar visitor. Let me give you some examples. In late August and early September 2025, there were unusual seismic events reported at multiple locations around the world. Not earthquakes in the traditional sense. These were deep, low-frequency vibrations that some seismologists described as inconsistent with any known geological process. The signals were detected by monitoring stations thousands of miles apart, sometimes occurring simultaneously, sometimes in patterns that suggested coordination rather than natural occurrence. Under normal circumstances, this would have been a major story. Scientists would have been scrambling to explain what could cause such signals, but it got minimal coverage because everyone was talking about 3i Atlas. In the same time period, multiple countries upgraded their military readiness levels without public explanation. Air defense systems in several nations went to higher alert states. Naval assets were repositioned. Satellite surveillance was intensified. These movements were noted by defense analysts and independent observers. But when questions were asked, the official responses were vague. Training exercises. Routine protocols. Nothing to be concerned about. And most people accepted these explanations because they were distracted, because their attention was elsewhere, because they were looking up instead of around. And then there were the reports from pilots and ship crews. Commercial airline pilots reporting unusual radar contacts that appeared and disappeared without explanation. Cargo ships detecting sonar anomalies that suggested large objects moving at speeds that shouldn't be possible underwater. These reports exist. They were filed. Some even made it into aviation safety databases. But they didn't become news stories because the news was focused on the interstellar visitor that everyone could see and talk about, rather than the unexplained phenomena that were harder to verify and easier to dismiss. Now, you might say this is just coincidence. Unusual events happen all the time. Seismic signals can have rare but natural causes. Military exercises do occur. Pilot reports of strange radar contacts have been around for decades. All true, but the concentration of these events in the weeks leading up to and during the September blackout is statistically unlikely to be random. And the fact that they all got overshadowed by the 3i Atlas story is either the most convenient timing in the world, or it's deliberate. Theory 2 says it's deliberate. Theory 2 says that 3i Atlas, whether it's artificial or not, is being used as a narrative device. A story that captures public attention and directs it towards space, towards something distant and abstract, while the real situation unfolds much closer to home. And the September blackout isn't about hiding images of an alien probe, it's about maintaining the distraction. It's about keeping the story alive, keeping people focused on the mystery in the sky so they don't notice what's happening at sea level. What could be happening that would justify such an elaborate misdirection? There are several possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. The first possibility is that contact has already occurred, not with a probe passing through the solar system, but with something that came here intentionally, something that arrived not in September but months or even years earlier, something that has been interacting with governmental and military authorities while the public remains completely unaware. If this is true, if there are extraterrestrial entities or craft operating on Earth or in our immediate vicinity, the secrecy makes perfect sense, because you can't keep that secret forever. Eventually, someone sees something, someone records something, someone asks questions that can't be ignored. So how do you manage that inevitable exposure? You create a different story. You focus attention on something in space, something far away, something that can be debated endlessly without anyone having to confront the immediate reality of visitors operating in our atmosphere or oceans. 3i Atlas becomes the perfect vehicle for this. It's real, it's documented, it's legitimately strange. So you emphasize its strangeness. You suppress some data to make it more mysterious. You create a pattern of secrecy that gets people speculating about what's being hidden. And while everyone debates whether the images show an alien spacecraft in the depths of the solar system, they miss the fact that alien spacecraft might be operating right here, conducting activities that governments are desperately trying to understand and control. The second possibility under Theory 2 is even darker. What if there's no extraterrestrial contact at all? What if the entire phenomenon, including 3i Atlas, is terrestrial in origin? What if classified programs, secret technologies, advanced systems that the public knows nothing about, have reached a point where they can no longer be completely hidden? What if the unusual radar contacts and sonar anomalies and seismic signals are all the result of human technology that's so far beyond what civilians understand that it might as well be alien? History has precedents for this. During the Cold War, sightings of U-2 spy planes and early stealth aircraft were often reported as UFOs. The government didn't correct these misidentifications because it served their interests to let people believe they were seeing something extraterrestrial rather than revealing the classified capabilities they were actually observing. The UFO phenomenon became, in some cases, a cover for military technology that couldn't be officially acknowledged. What if that's happening again? But on a much larger scale, what if decades of classified research into propulsion systems, energy generation, materials science, things that the public has no idea exist, have produced capabilities that would seem impossible if revealed? And what if these systems are now being deployed, tested, operated in ways that can't be completely hidden? So how do you manage that exposure? You create an extraterrestrial narrative. You point to an object in space. You let people speculate about alien probes, and while they're looking up, you continue operating the terrestrial programs that you need to keep secret for reasons of national security or strategic advantage. Under this scenario, the September blackout is about maintaining narrative control. It's about ensuring that when people see something strange, when unexplained phenomena occur, the public explanation channels them toward extraterrestrial speculation rather than toward questions about classified programs. 3i Atlas doesn't have to be artificial for this to work. It just has to be strange enough, mysterious enough, that it can serve as the focus of attention while other operations continue below the surface of public awareness. There's a third possibility under Theory 2 that combines elements of the first two. What if contact has occurred, but not recently? What if agreements exist between terrestrial governments and non-human intelligences, agreements that have been in place for years or decades, agreements that involve exchange of information, technology, or resources, agreements that absolutely cannot be revealed because they would shatter every assumption about sovereignty, democracy, and the relationship between governments and the people they supposedly serve? If such agreements exist, if there's an ongoing relationship between human authorities and extraterrestrial entities, then the secrecy makes perfect sense. But secrecy that profound is hard to maintain forever. Eventually something slips. Eventually evidence accumulates. Eventually people start asking questions that can't be deflected with simple denials. So how do you manage that inevitable erosion of perfect secrecy? You prepare a limited disclosure. You create a story about discovering an alien probe. You make it seem like first contact is happening now, publicly with everyone watching, and you hope that this managed narrative prevents people from digging deeper into what's really been happening for years behind closed doors. The September blackout, under this scenario, is a test. It's a way of gauging public reaction to the possibility of extraterrestrial technology. It's a way of seeing how the story spreads, how people respond, how institutions handle the questions that arise, and the data suppression, the missing images, the embargo dates, all of it is calibrated to generate exactly the right amount of mystery, enough to capture attention, enough to start conversations, but not enough to force immediate, complete disclosure of the deeper truth that authorities need to keep hidden a while longer. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is starting to sound like conspiracy theory. This is starting to feel like paranoia, rather than analysis. And I understand that reaction. Theory 2 requires you to believe that governmental and scientific institutions are capable of sophisticated deception, that they would deliberately mislead the public about discoveries and phenomena, that they would coordinate complex narratives across national boundaries and agencies. That's a lot to accept. But here's the thing. We know they're capable of it. We have historical examples. The Manhattan Project involved tens of thousands of people and remained secret for years. The existence of the National Security Agency wasn't officially acknowledged for decades after it was created. Classified programs have built entire aircraft, developed new technologies, and conducted operations that the public didn't learn about until years or decades later. So the capability for organized secrecy on a massive scale is not theoretical, it's demonstrated historical fact. And we also know that governments plan for scenarios they consider unlikely but catastrophic if they occur. There are protocols for nuclear war. There are protocols for pandemic outbreaks. There are protocols for economic collapse. Is it really so far-fetched to think there are protocols for contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, or for managing public awareness of classified technologies that have reached capabilities beyond what civilians can imagine? These protocols would exist. They would be detailed. They would include plans for information management, for narrative control, for staged disclosure if complete secrecy becomes impossible. What if the September blackout is those protocols in action? What if we're watching a plan unfold that was designed years ago for exactly this kind of situation? A situation where the truth, whatever that truth is, threatens to break through the barriers of secrecy. And the response isn't to immediately reveal everything. The response is to manage the revelation, to control the narrative, to ensure that what people learn and when they learn it serves the interests of the authorities managing the disclosure rather than serving the interests of truth or transparency. Let me give you more specific evidence that points toward Theory 2. Evidence that suggests the 3i Atlas situation is being managed rather than simply suppressed. Start with the pattern of leaks. When information is genuinely classified for security reasons, leaks are rare and those who leak face serious consequences. But with 3i Atlas, information has been leaking constantly. The initial observations that showed the sunward jet, the spectroscopic data revealing unusual chemistry, the discovery of the embargo dates in the ESA archive, the discussions of the Psyche blackout, all of this information got out. All of it became public knowledge, almost as if someone wanted it to. Contrast this with truly sensitive classified programs. When information about those programs leaks, you see aggressive responses, investigations, arrests, prosecutions. But with 3i Atlas, the information flows and there's no apparent effort to stop it. NASA doesn't issue statements denying the blackout occurred. ESA doesn't claim the embargo dates were unauthorized leaks. The agencies just remain silent while the story spreads, almost as if the spread is intentional, almost as if the mystery is the point. Then there's the behavior of professional astronomers. Some are genuinely frustrated by the lack of data access. They're asking questions and demanding answers, but others are curiously quiet. Scientists who you would expect to be loudly protesting the suppression of observations are saying nothing. Now, maybe they just don't want to risk their careers by challenging NASA and ESA. That's certainly possible. But it's also possible that some of them know more than they're saying. It's possible that some have been briefed on why the data is being restricted, and that briefing was compelling enough that they're willing to tolerate the suppression even though it goes against every instinct they have about open science. What could that briefing have contained? Under Theory 1, it would be evidence that 3i Atlas is artificial and that governments need time to analyze the implications before going public. Under Theory 2, it would be something else. It would be information about what's really happening, about why the distraction is necessary, about what they're trying to manage while public attention is directed elsewhere. And that briefing would include explicit instructions that they cannot discuss what they've been told. They have to maintain the appearance of being as frustrated and confused as everyone else, even though they know the real story. There's also the international coordination to consider. The September blackout affects both NASA and ESA, American and European space agencies. Different countries, different political systems, different chains of command. For them to both suppress data about the same object, there has to be coordination at a very high level. Government to government, not just scientific agencies making independent decisions. This level of coordination suggests that whatever's happening with 3i Atlas is considered important enough to transcend normal international competition and secrecy. But here's what's interesting. That same coordination exists for other phenomena too. When military pilots from different countries report encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena, when naval vessels from different navies detect unusual underwater contacts, when seismic monitoring stations from different nations record the same anomalous signals, there's often similar coordination in how the information is handled. Similar patterns of initial publicity followed by official silence. Similar reluctance to provide detailed data even when that data should be unclassified. As if there's a standing agreement between governments about how to manage public awareness of phenomena that don't fit conventional explanations. This suggests that the 3i Atlas situation isn't unique. It's part of a larger pattern, and that pattern is consistent with Theory 2. It's consistent with the idea that there are ongoing phenomena, ongoing operations, ongoing situations that governments have agreed to keep from public view. And when something threatens that secrecy, when public attention starts focusing in dangerous directions, the response is coordinated misdirection. Point people towards something else. Give them a mystery to solve that isn't the real mystery. Keep them speculating about distant objects while the immediate reality remains hidden. Let me address the obvious objection to Theory 2. If the whole 3i Atlas mystery is a distraction, why make it so mysterious? Why not just release the data and show that it's a normal comet with some unusual but explicable properties? That would end the speculation. That would eliminate the distraction. Problem solved. Except it's not that simple, because if you release data that shows 3i Atlas is completely natural, people stop paying attention to it. And if you need them to keep paying attention, if you need the story to remain active as a focal point for speculation about extraterrestrial possibilities, then you need to maintain the mystery. You need to withhold just enough information that people keep wondering, keep discussing, keep focusing on this object rather than on other things. The embargo date of April 3rd, 2026 becomes crucial in this context. That date is far enough in the future that it keeps the story alive for months, but it's not so far that people give up hope of ever seeing the data. It's calibrated to maintain engagement, to keep 3i Atlas in public consciousness, to ensure that whenever something strange happens, whenever unexplained phenomena occur, people's first thought is about the interstellar visitor rather than about terrestrial possibilities. The embargo isn't just about hiding data, it's about timing the release of that data to serve whatever agenda is really being pursued. And when April comes, when the ESA data is supposedly going to be released, I predict one of three things will happen. First possibility, the data is released, but it's ambiguous. It shows something unusual but not definitively artificial, so the debate continues. The mystery persists. The distraction remains effective. Second possibility, the date is pushed back again. New reasons for delay are discovered. The embargo extends further into the future. The story stays alive longer. Third possibility, the data is released and it clearly shows either that 3i Atlas is natural or that it's artificial, but by that point something else has happened. Some other development has occurred that makes the 3i Atlas story less important. Mission accomplished, the distraction served its purpose. Now, let me take this to its logical conclusion. Let me tell you what I think might really be happening if Theory 2 is correct. I think there's a non-human intelligence operating on Earth, not visiting, not passing through, operating, here, now. And I think this has been going on for longer than the public realizes. I think the unusual seismic signals are real. I think the radar and sonar anomalies are real. I think there are craft or entities or phenomena that governments have been tracking and studying and possibly interacting with for years. And I think that situation is reaching a point where it can't be kept completely secret anymore. Too many people are seeing things. Too many sensors are detecting things. Too much data is accumulating that can't be explained away with weather balloons and temperature inversions and equipment malfunctions. So the decision was made to begin preparing the public for disclosure. But not sudden, shocking disclosure. Managed disclosure. Gradual revelation that carefully shapes public understanding in ways that serve governmental interests rather than simply revealing the raw truth. 3i Atlas becomes the vehicle for this. It's a real object with real anomalies that can be genuinely debated. So you emphasize its strangeness. You create mystery around it. You let people speculate that it might be artificial, and when you finally reveal that yes, it is artificial, that becomes the cover story for First Contact. The official narrative of when humanity discovered we're not alone, even though the actual contact happened earlier, happened differently, happened in ways that can't be publicly revealed because they involve agreements or interactions or situations that would be too destabilizing if fully disclosed. The September blackout, under this scenario, is part of the managed disclosure process. It's creating the right atmosphere of mystery and speculation. It's priming the public to accept extraordinary revelations. It's testing how people react to the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence, and the data that's being withheld isn't primarily about 3i Atlas. It's about everything else that's happening while everyone's attention is focused on the interstellar visitor. I know this sounds extreme. I know it requires believing things that feel like they belong in science fiction rather than reality. But consider what we know for certain. We know the September blackout happened. We know data is being suppressed across multiple space agencies. We know there are embargo dates set months in the future for observations that should be publicly available immediately. We know that governmental and military activities have increased in ways that haven't been adequately explained. We know that unusual phenomena have been reported and then minimized or ignored. All of this is documented. All of this is verifiable. The only question is why. Why is this happening? Theory 1 says it's because 3i Atlas is artificial and authorities need time to prepare for disclosure of that discovery. Theory 2 says it's because something else is happening, something terrestrial or at least close to Earth, and 3i Atlas is the cover story that directs attention elsewhere. Both theories fit the evidence. Both explain the patterns we observe, but they have very different implications for what comes next and what the truth really is. So which theory is correct? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Maybe neither is fully correct. Maybe the truth is some combination of both, some scenario even stranger than what I've outlined. But what I do know is that the simple, official explanation that the September blackout was just a technical glitch or a routine data processing delay is obviously inadequate. The pattern is too consistent. The coordination is too obvious. The timing is too convenient. Something is being hidden. Something is being managed. Something is happening that we're not being told about. And the stakes are enormous. If Theory 1 is correct, if 3i Atlas really is an alien probe, that's the most important discovery in human history. It changes everything about how we understand our place in the cosmos. It raises immediate questions about contact, communication, intentions, threats, opportunities. It forces us to confront the reality that we're not alone, and that other intelligences are capable of interstellar travel in ways we can barely imagine. But if Theory 2 is correct, if the real situation is happening right here on Earth while we're distracted by the sky, then we're living through something even more profound. We're living through First Contact, but nobody's telling us. We're living through a period where governmental authorities are interacting with or responding to non-human intelligence while the public remains in carefully managed ignorance. We're living through the implementation of protocols for revelation that were designed to control what we learn and when we learn it, rather than to simply share the truth as it's discovered. Either way, the September blackout is the most significant event in space exploration since the moon landing, not because of what it revealed, but because of what it's hiding. The missing data represents either proof of extraterrestrial technology in our solar system, or proof that governments are willing and able to coordinate sophisticated deceptions about discoveries in space while managing separate agendas on Earth. Those are the only explanations that fit the facts. Those are the only scenarios that account for the systematic suppression we can document and verify. So what do we do with this knowledge? How do we respond to a situation where we can prove something is being hidden, but we can't prove what it is? The first step is continued pressure for transparency. The agencies need to be challenged. The missing data needs to be demanded. The embargo dates need to be questioned. The systematic suppression needs to be made so publicly visible that maintaining it becomes more costly than releasing the information. The second step is vigilance about everything else that's happening. If Theory 2 is correct, if 3i Atlas is a distraction, then we need to pay attention to what we're being distracted from. Monitor the unusual reports. Track the military activities. Follow the seismic data. Watch for patterns in phenomena that normally get dismissed or ignored. Because if something extraordinary is happening at ground level while everyone's looking up, the evidence will still exist. It will just be buried under lack of attention and official dismissal. The third step is preparation for either scenario. If disclosure comes, whether it's about 3i Atlas or about something else, whether it's managed or forced by events that escape control, we need to be ready to process extraordinary information without panic. We need to approach it rationally, skeptically, but also with openness to possibilities that challenge our assumptions. Because whether the revelation is about an alien probe in space or about contact that's already occurring on Earth, it will fundamentally change how humanity understands itself. And that change needs to be navigated thoughtfully. And the fourth step is recognizing that we might be living through history, not future history, not something that might happen someday, history happening right now. The September blackout might be the moment when everything changed, the moment when the truth about our place in the universe started to emerge, the moment when the barriers of secrecy began to crack, the moment when humanity started the transition from cosmic solitude to cosmic awareness, or the moment when we realized our governments have been managing realities we didn't know existed. That's an extraordinary possibility. That's a profound responsibility. And it means that what we do next, how we respond to the evidence, how we demand accountability, how we process whatever truth eventually emerges, all of that matters more than we might realize. Because if we get this wrong, if we allow managed disclosure to become managed deception, if we accept limited truths while larger truths remain hidden, then we might never get another chance to demand the whole story. The real reason for NASA's blackout isn't what you think. It's either more cosmic or more terrestrial than the simple story suggests. It's either about an alien probe that will change everything we know about life in the universe, or it's about something happening right here that governments don't want us to understand. Both possibilities are extraordinary. Both are supported by evidence. Both require us to fundamentally reconsider what we thought we knew about transparency, about space exploration, about the relationship between citizens and the institutions that claim to serve them. I've laid out the case for both theories. I've shown you the evidence that supports each. I've explained why the official explanations are inadequate. Now you have to decide what you believe. You have to look at the patterns, the timing, the coordination, the systematic suppression, and come to your own conclusions about what it means. But whatever you decide, remember this: the September blackout happened. The data is missing. The embargo dates exist. These are facts, and facts demand explanation. The question isn't whether something is being hidden. The question is what is being hidden and why. The question is whether we're being protected from a truth we're not ready for, or whether we're being manipulated by a narrative designed to keep us from understanding what's really happening. I think the truth is stranger than either theory alone suggests. I think there are layers to this that we haven't even begun to understand. I think the September blackout is just one visible piece of a much larger puzzle that spans space agencies and military commands and governmental administrations across multiple countries. I think we're seeing evidence of coordination on a scale that suggests preparation for something enormous. And I think that something is coming. Whether it's disclosure about 3i Atlas, or revelation about terrestrial contact, or some combination of extraordinary truths that will rewrite our understanding of reality, something is building. The blackout wasn't an end, it was a beginning. It was the opening move in a process that will unfold over months or years, and by the time we understand what really happened, by the time all the data is finally released and all the secrets are finally revealed, we will look back on September 2025 as the moment when everything changed, the moment when the old certainties started to crumble, the moment when humanity began the journey from one understanding of the cosmos to another. The visitor they don't want you to see isn't just 3i Atlas, it's whatever truth they're protecting behind the missing data and the embargo dates and the systematic silences. It's the reality that exists beyond the official narratives. It's the understanding that our governments and institutions have been managing our awareness rather than expanding it, controlling our knowledge rather than sharing it. And the real question isn't what NASA's cameras saw when they pointed at 3i Atlas on September 3, 2025. The real question is what else those cameras could have been looking at while everyone's attention was directed toward an object millions of kilometers away. What else is happening in our skies, our oceans, our underground facilities, that we're not supposed to notice because we're too busy speculating about an interstellar visitor? The blackout continues. Not just in the archives, in our understanding, in what we're allowed to know versus what is actually known by those with access to classified information and restricted data. And until that blackout ends, until transparency is restored, until the full truth emerges, whatever that truth might be, we remain in the dark about the most important question humans have ever asked. Are we alone? And if we're not alone, when did we find out? And what have we been doing about it while the public watched carefully staged mysteries play out in the distant sky? Theory 1 says 3i Atlas is the answer. An alien probe. First contact. The discovery that changes everything. Theory 2 says 3i Atlas is the question we're supposed to be asking while the real answer unfolds somewhere else, somewhere closer, somewhere we're not supposed to be looking. Both theories recognize that the September blackout was not what it appeared to be. Both acknowledge that something extraordinary is being hidden. They just disagree about what and why. So you tell me, what do you think is really happening? What explanation best fits the evidence? What theory accounts for the patterns we can document and the silences we can verify? Because the truth is out there. Somewhere, in classified files, or in the sky, or in the depths of the ocean, or in facilities we don't know exist. The truth is out there. And the September blackout, whatever else it was a glimpse of that truth trying to break through the barriers of institutional secrecy. The visitor they don't want you to see is real. Whether it's in space or on Earth, whether it's technology or intelligence or phenomena we don't yet understand, it's real. And the fact that they don't want you to see it, the fact that data is being suppressed and embargoes are being imposed and systematic silences are being maintained, tells you everything you need to know about how significant this is, about how much it matters, about how much it would change if the full truth were revealed. We live in extraordinary times, times when the impossible becomes plausible, when the unthinkable becomes necessary to consider, when the boundaries between science fiction and documented fact become blurred by missing data and unexplained phenomena and coordinated secrecy. The September blackout was the opening of a door, a crack in the wall, a moment when the machinery of information control became visible to anyone paying attention. And now that door is open, even if just slightly, we can't close it again. We can't unsee what we've seen. We can't unknow what we've learned about how discovery is managed and how truth is controlled. We can only push forward, demand more transparency, ask harder questions, refuse to accept silence as an answer. Because on the other side of that door, beyond the missing data and the embargo dates, lies truth. Whether it's about an alien probe or terrestrial contact or something even stranger, truth exists. And humanity deserves access to it. No matter how extraordinary it might be, no matter how much it challenges our assumptions, no matter what it reveals about the universe or about the authorities who have been managing our understanding of it. The real reason for NASA's blackout isn't what you think. It's bigger, it's stranger, it's more important, and it's waiting to be fully revealed. The only question is whether we'll demand that revelation, or whether we'll accept the managed disclosure, the limited truths, the carefully calibrated mysteries designed to keep us looking in the right direction while missing what's really happening everywhere else. That choice is ours. That responsibility is ours. And the September blackout has given us everything we need to make that choice wisely. All the evidence of systematic suppression, all the proof that something extraordinary is being hidden, all the patterns that demand explanation. Now we just need the courage to insist on truth rather than accepting mystery, to demand data rather than tolerating silences, to recognize that the most important discoveries of our time might be the ones they're working hardest to keep us from seeing. The visitor is real, the blackout is real, and the truth, whatever it is waiting for us to be brave enough to demand it.